Make this the most important part of our day right now, God.
Well, welcome to reality, beloved. Thanks for joining with us tonight and appreciating you participating in our worship time. It is different. I'm actually recording from my kitchen table, and I'm looking out the window, and there's snow on the ground, and it's freezing cold, and yes, I have my coffee. So anyway, hope you're staying warm, and looks like the weather's going to be a bit wintry for a couple of days, and be safe. And anyway, welcome. So glad you're with us. Tonight we're going to continue our study of 1 Samuel, and we're going to be first in 1 Samuel chapter 5. We're going to try to look at the whole chapter. And beloved, I'm going to tell you that our focus tonight is going to be about idol worship. And sounds like we're talking about some Old Testament stuff for sure, but this is something that's very prevalent in our culture today. So I think it's worth some time to look at. So, will you join with me? I'm going to read to you. I'm going to read 1 Samuel chapter 5. I'm going to read it in its entirety. It is 12 verses long, and then we will get to our study. Now the Philistines took the ark of God and brought it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. Then the Philistines took the ark of God and brought it to the house of Dagon and set it by Dagon. Dagon was their god. He was the chief deity of the Philistines. So this is a temple that they have built at Ashdod for him. He was, I think, in the Canaanite gods, Dagon was considered to be the father of Baal. Verse 3. When the Ashdodites arose early the next morning, notice the next morning, behold, Dagon had fallen on his face to the ground before the ark of the Lord, the ark of Yahweh. So they took Dagon and set him in his place again. But when they arose early the next morning, behold, Dagon had fallen on his face to the ground before the ark of the Lord, and the head of Dagon and both the palms of his hands were cut off on the threshold. Only the trunk of Dagon was left to him. Therefore neither the priest of Dagon nor all who enter Dagon's house tread on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod to this day. Now, we're getting a commentary now about what it meant for his head and his hands to be on the threshold. And we'll talk just briefly about that here in a little bit. Verse 6, now the hand of the Lord, the hand of Yahweh. Notice now, Dagon does not have any hands, but now the hand of Yahweh was heavy on the Ashdodites, and he ravaged them and smote them with tumors, both Ashdod and its territories. When the men of Ashdod saw that it was so, they said, the ark of the God of Israel must not remain with us, for his hand is severe on us and on Dagon our God. So they sent and gathered all the lords of the Philistines to them and said, what shall we do with the ark of the God of Israel? And they said, let the ark of the God of Israel be brought around to Gath. And they brought the ark of the God of Israel around. Now, there's sort of a subtle sense that the Lord of Gath volunteers Gath here. So after they had brought it around, the hand of the Lord was against the city with very great confusion. And he smote the men of the city, both young and old, so that tumors broke out on them. So they sent the ark of God to Ekron. Notice there wasn't a council of the lords. They sent the ark of God to Ekron. And as the ark of God came to Ekron, the Ekronites cried out, saying, they have brought the ark of God of Israel around to us. Yea! No, that isn't what they say. They say, to kill us and our people. They sent therefore and gathered all the lords of the Philistines and said, send away the ark of God of the God of Israel, and let it return to its own place, so that it will not kill us and our people. For there was a deadly confusion throughout the city, and the hand of God was very heavy there. And the men who did not die were smitten with tumors, and the cry of the city went up to heaven. So there's our chapter for tonight. I'm going to start with a question. Now, if you're with someone tonight, I want you to look to them and I want you to ask them this question. What is an idol? And then just take some moments to, now if you're by yourself, get out a piece of paper, write out this question, what is an idol, and then take a moment to try to answer it. Or another way to do that is finish this sentence. An idol is. And you're trying to stay close to what the Bible would say an idol is, what God would say an idol is. And so let me just briefly pause for a moment. You can put pause on this recording and takes a moment or two and try to answer this question. What is an idol? Now, I'm going to make a generous assumption. I think it's probably pretty accurate. You guys probably came up with some really good answers. What is an idol? And I wish that we were in person so that I could hear your answers. I probably would want to write them down because I know that they're thoughtful and that they are accurate. But here's mine. Here's a definition we're going to work off of tonight. An idol is anything that you value or prioritize or seek after more than God. Okay, let me say it again. It is anything that you value more than God, that you prioritize more than God, or seek after more than God. It's anything that is a second thing, but you and me, we make it a first thing. What I mean by that is it's really not an ultimate thing, but we make it an ultimate thing. You can kind of get a feel for those kinds of things in our life when you finish this sentence, I can't live without. And what your answer might be is it might be an idol. Now, I want to be careful with that. There is some medication that I'm on that I can't live without, but I don't make that medication an idol. So you have to be careful with it. But think about that. What is it that you clutch and cling to because it is just so valuable to you, such a priority to you that could it possibly be something that has become an idol for you? An idol is often a gift of God, but we've made it God instead of treating it as a gift. Okay, so some things, some things that would fit this category. Well, addiction would be in that. Greeds, any kind of greed. The need for power or popularity, that would probably create an idol. A protection from the things I fear, that can mean more to me than God does. But now there also are good things that can become idols. Success is a good thing, but it can become an idol. Exercise is a good thing, but it can become an idol. Financial security. I know some people who have made their marriage an idol. These kind of idols, the ones that are made out of good things, they're kind of sneaky. They are good things that you want in your life, but what happens is that you began to want them too much. They are good to have in your life, but too much of a good thing can become an idol, and that becomes bad for you. Just as an example, when I graduated from seminary, and when I went to seminary in Kentucky, I moved back to Texas, and as soon after I moved back, my parents came to see me, and they took me out to eat barbecue. Now, back then, Kentucky didn't have barbecue, or at least the area that I lived in didn't have barbecue. So I feasted on the barbecue. I hadn't had barbecue for years, and I think I had 4, maybe 5. I don't think I had 6 helpings, but I could have. Anyway, you get the idea. I feasted on this barbecue. However, they found me the next morning, passed out on the bathroom floor, with one hand up on the toilet seat. I mean, I was out. I had thrown up all night because either I had too much of a good thing. That was the problem. Mom and Dad took me to the emergency room where I continued to dry heave. This was a Sunday morning that all of this was taking place. No matter what they gave me, I wouldn't stop throwing up. So finally, they came in, they gave me a shot, and they turned to my dad and said, "Now take him home because this is going to knock him out." So I got home that Sunday afternoon, went to sleep, and I woke up Tuesday night. Too much of a good thing. I got to tell you, I didn't have barbecue for 10 years. Okay, now we are talking about idols, not barbecue. Okay. Look at verses 1 and 2. What are the Philistines doing here? Well, first, they are adding a god to their temple. They bring the ark of Yahweh into the temple and set it next to Dagon. Then, this is what they're doing. They're adding another god to their temple. I mean, isn't two better than just one? I mean, isn't two pairs of shoes better than just one? Isn't 2 or 6 cups of coffee better than just one? Isn't 2 motorcycles better than just one? Okay, you get the idea. But that's part of what they're doing. But they are also putting their trophy from their victory in war. This is their trophy. And they conquered the Israelites. They have now taken the Israelites' God from them. And so this is their trophy, and they're setting this trophy before their God. And their God's name is Dagon. And sometimes I hear people call it Dagon. And I guess that would be, but that sounds too close to, a cuss word that my grandpa used to say, daggone it, when he'd smash his thumb with a hammer or something like that. So I say Dagon. The name is similar to the Hebrew words for grain, cloud, and rain. So he probably was a fertility god. This was the Philistines' main god. He was said to be the father of Baal, who was also a fertility god. There was also a temple to him at Gaza, but that was the only 2 places that a temple had been erected to him. Now notice they set the ark beside Dagon. Now, I want you to catch this. It doesn't say that they set the ark by a statue of Dagon or an idol of Dagon or an image of Dagon. The way it's worded is they set the ark of God by Dagon, him himself. So the idea there is that there was the belief that the false god himself existed in that image that was sitting in the temple. And now think about this. What is God's response to this? I mean, essentially what they're doing is saying, our God is superior to the Israelite God, and so we're going to set him beside Dagon and as a trophy, as a conquered God. But what is God's response to this? Verse 3. Well, God thumps Dagon. He thumps their idol. The next morning, it's not a month later, it's not a week later, it's after the first night, Dagon is laying face down on the ground in the dirt before the ark of Yahweh. The very next morning. Now, this is a posture of submission and worship. In other words, God isn't going to have this. In Exodus chapter 20, where the 10 commandments are being given, the very first is, there shall be no gods before me. That's how it's worded. But that Hebrew word can as equally be translated, there shall be no gods beside me. Now notice something here. The 2 times that Dagon is knocked over, it is said to be face down on the ground before the ark of Yahweh. Now, it uses Yahweh's personal, you should say before the ark of the Lord. And the word Lord there should be all caps. That is a designation that the name Yahweh is being used, or at least we think that's what the name is, Yahweh. It's God's personal name. Now, in other places, and every other time in this chapter, the ark is called the Ark of God, Elohim. Why the personal name just here? I think it is to say that that God takes idol worship personally, and he will personally do something about it. So Yahweh slaps the back of Dagon's head and knocks him in the dirt. So the Philistine priests have to pick him up and put him in his place again. Why, beloved, wasn't that a clue to the priest? Why wasn't that a wake up that Dagon was really nothing? Dagon is so weak, he couldn't pick himself up. They had to help him. When a God needs your help, you need to pause and think about your God. Why wasn't that an aha moment for these priests? And I think it's this. I think it makes the point that idol worship can blind you to the truth. When you're valuing something more than God, when you're prioritizing something more than God, when you are seeking something more than God, that can blind you to the real truth. Idol worship blinds you to what is really most important. It blinds you to what really matters. Now think about that. You're saying, in idol worship, you're saying these certain things are very, very important when they're really not. And that can begin to blind you to what really is most important. Now, verse 4 is the second day now, and Dagon is thumped again this time. They come in the next morning, and he's laying face down. But not only has he been knocked down, thumped really hard, but he's also been mutilated. Now, the NIV translated his hands and head were broken off, but the actual Hebrew there is cut off. The Middle Eastern cultures of that day were very familiar with the mutilation of bodies in battle. Feet, hands, and or heads were cut off conquered enemies. Sometimes that was done to display trophies. I mean, heads were actually considered trophies. Sometimes to count the dead, that's how they would count how many were dead. And sometimes to make sure you never had to fight that enemy again. But this cutting off of Dagon's hands and head has a deeper meaning, I think. Hands were seen as the symbol of power. The head was the location of thinking and especially speaking. So what's really being said here is Dagon's voice and power had been taken from him. He really had no voice or power to begin with. And so it was really a more accurate statement now. He has no voice. He has no power. He was now powerless, voiceless, lifeless. Basically a very large paperweight or doorstop. And yet, the priests continue in their idol worship. Verse 5. They had to put him back together in order to set him back in his place. Now, one interesting theory about the threshold that's mentioned here, and that they now sort of step over or leap over it, the idea there was that it now became a sacred thing because Dagon's head and hands had touched it. Also know that often the threshold was considered the place where you plead for help and mercy. So it's almost like the image that Dagon is pleading for help and mercy. But what they do is that they make the threshold something sacred now because Dagon has touched it. And it's just that, the way idol worship will twist things is so interesting. It's what we do in our life. So what happens here is that because they make the threshold a sacred place, they institute a religious ceremony for it. In other words, they double their efforts to make their idol worship meaningful. When my idol gets thumped sometimes, I double my effort to get what I need from it. Does that make sense? Idols will always get thumped. they'll always get knocked over because they're really nothing. They were never meant to be gods in the first place. So they will get thumped. And often what we humans do is we set them back up and then we work harder at making them what we need them to be. Now, verse 6 is stage 3 of God's response. So stage 1 is he thumped Dagon. Next, he slapped the back of his head and knocked his head and hands off. And now this is stage 3. Verse 6, the people continue to prop up their idol, so God thumps a little harder and a little more personal now. Tumors come. Now, this word in Hebrew is really hard to translate. It could mean something that was related to bubonic plague that comes with that plague, where lymph nodes swell and become very engorged, especially in the armpits and in the groin areas. And by the way, that becomes fatal if untreated, because it causes the body to eventually become septic, full of bacteria. And later on, we'll hear about mice or rats. And so some commentators think that this is what's being talked about. It's talking about tumors, is these very swollen lymph nodes. But now, another possible way to translate this word is hemorrhoids or sores on the backside due to dysentery. This is some other ideas. Very painful. Now, I don't think you can die from hemorrhoids. You might. I know that sometimes if they burst, you can bleed, and you can bleed a lot. But I do know bleeding can then get infected, and dysentery for sure can kill you. So there were deaths from these illnesses that are being reported in chapter 5. So all of this involves physical suffering, physical pain, and along with that would come emotional pain, as well as humiliation. A disruption of normal life and social life, and then there would be eventual death and grief from that loss as well. What's going on here? God is now getting really personal about idol worship. Now, C.S. Lewis once said, God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our consciousness, but he shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Pain. Now, God is using this painful process to get the attention of the Philistines. Now notice in verse 6 and 7, we have this phrase, the hand of God. God has hands. In other words, he has power, while Dagon has no hands, no power. The ark now goes on a tour with God. Here goes God on tour. And he goes on tour of some of the other Philistine cities. It starts, the ark of God starts at Ashdod, and then it goes to Gath. Now, it is almost like the Lord of Gath volunteers Gath. Yeah, bring it here. Okay. Why Gath? Why there? Why do you think they thought that it would be different coming to Gath? Well, here's a guess of mine, but mine is that there was no temple of Dagon there. So I wonder if they thought that if they got Dagon out of sight from the ark of God, that this God would kind of settle down then. Like if I can keep my idol out of view or hidden from God, things will go better. If I can keep my idol worship and God separated, then that will work. But it's just simply not true. God knows the heart of humans. He knows the idols that are worshipped in our hearts. Verse 9, there's this phrase, against the city. God comes against the city. That's waging war language. So God is actually at war in the city. And he smokes them. Smokes them at Gath. So they just up and take it to Ekron. No consulting the lords. They just get the ark somewhere else. is their point. And when it comes into view of Ekron, oh my gosh, Ekron just freaks out. Ekron was the closest city to them, so this is why they're taking it there. It's like, get it out of here and get it to another place as fast as possible. Ekron, verse 11, cries foul. It's like, God, you guys trying to kill us? They call the 5 Philistine lords, and what they do, they say, send Yahweh away. Send him away. And send him back to his people. Now in chapter 6, we'll see the story continue. There's an interesting play on words now here in this very end of this chapter, chapter 5. Verses 11 and 12. The hand of God was heavy there. That's what it says. The Hebrew word for heavy is the word kabod. And most of the time that word is translated glory, not heavy. It does mean heavy, but it also is translated most often as glory. The glory of God is not, beloved, in exile. It never was, never will be. It's running the show over in Philistine. It's taken over the territory. If you think you can put God in a box, think again. That's what's really the point of this. The glory can be devastating to idol worship. It is like the glory of God is radioactive, and if you are unwilling to bow your face to him as supreme God and only God, then life may become really painful. At the end, the cry of the city goes up to, notice it goes up to heaven. This is an echo from the Exodus story where the cry of the people of Israel reached the heavens and God heard them. They are crying out to the heavens. The Philistines are defeated. They are humiliated, and they are now being placed in great jeopardy with everyone so sick. This is the end result of idol worship, beloved. This is a picture of where idol worship takes us. Yahweh is on the loose, free and on the move, bringing idols down to the dirt. And he is still in that business. He hasn't quit. Any trust or reliance you have on an idol will bring the same results that we're seeing here in chapter 5, in some form or in some fashion. So, beloved, seriously, examine your hearts. Are there things you value, prioritize, or seek after more than you do God? Is there anything you're putting beside God or before God? You might think you're getting away with it, but there will be a day when God thumps that idol into the dirt and shows that it is nothing compared to him. He may someday make your idol powerless, lifeless, unable to give you the benefit that you think you get from it. Or, if he has to, he may shout at you through pain to get you to rid yourself of that idol and put him, the true and living God, in his rightful place in your life. God will be as gentle as he can be, but as tough as he needs to be. Now let me say that again. God will be as gentle as he can be, but as tough as he needs to be. You see, beloved, idol worship is like drinking salt water to quench your thirst. Of course, now, small amounts of salt water are not going to harm you. They could, if you do that every day over a long period of time, that could become an issue, yes. But if you make salt water the source of quenching your thirst, it will make you sick, it will dehydrate you, and eventually it will take your life. And so does an idol. This is why God will get tough with you to make you stop doing something that is killing you. Beloved, holding on to idols means not holding on to God. And holding on to God means not holding on to idols. Do you hear that? Let me say it again. Holding on to idols means not holding on to God. But holding on to God means not holding on to idols. It's your choice. If you set God beside your idol, or you set an idol beside God, the idol is going to get thumped, beloved. And if you keep setting up your idol, you will get thumped, and the results can be painful. Well, I don't want to end on that. I don't want to end on the word painful. The reason why God does that is because He loves us so much. When we participate in those things that really take life from us and not give us life, then God goes to work to remove those things from us so that abundant life becomes ours. Well, beloved, I got to stop there. Be blessed. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you soon.
Give you my soul.